London by John Escott. Chapter 1. A Great City. 2,000 years ago, London was a small village by the River Thames. Then the Romans came and built a town, and thousands of people lived there. Now, in the 21st century, London is the biggest city in Britain, with more than 7 million people. It is the capital city of the United Kingdom, the home of Queen Elizabeth II, and the home of the British government. Millions of visitors come to London every year. The name London comes from the Romans. People lived here before the Romans came, but we do not know very much about them. The Romans came to England in the year 43. Their ships came up the River Thames from the sea, and they built houses and other buildings next to the river. They built a bridge over the river, and they called the town Londinium. You can find out about London's early days and about the Romans at the Museum of London. It was a rich town, and about 50,000 people lived in it. But soon after the year 400, the Romans left Londinium and went back to Rome. And for 300 years, London was a quiet place. Then people began to live in the town again, and it was soon rich and important. People called Angles, Saxons, and Jutes came to Britain from Germany, Holland, and Denmark. Then, in the 9th and 10th centuries, Danish ships came up the River Thames and destroyed many of Londinium's buildings. In 1066, England had a new king, William the Conqueror from France. William came to live in London and built a castle there. Today we know it as the Tower of London. London was now the biggest and most important city in England, and it got bigger and bigger. In 1509, when Henry VIII was king, there were 50,000 people in London. In 1600, when Henry's daughter Elizabeth I was queen, there were 200,000 people. The plague often came to London, but 1665 was the worst year of all. In the hot summer that year, thousands of people were ill, and 100,000 of them died. 1665 was called the Year of the Great Plague. Then a year later, in 1666, there was a big fire, the Great Fire of London. It began in a house in Pudding Lane, near London Bridge. Most houses were built of wood at that time, and fires love wood. The Great Fire of London went through street after street after street, and it did not stop for 4 days. More than 250,000 people lost their homes in the fire. It destroyed St. Paul's Cathedral and 88 other churches. But it also destroyed most of the worst old buildings. A new St. Paul's Cathedral was built between 1675 and 1711. In the 18th century, Britain was one of the most important countries in the world, and London was its most important city. Some Londoners were very rich, and they built some of the most beautiful houses in the city. Many of those houses are standing today. But at the same time, other people lived in cold, dark, wet houses. Many of the buildings in London today were built when Queen Victoria was the Queen. She was the Queen for nearly 64 years, from 1837, when she was 18 years old, to 1901, when she died. In that time, many railways were built, and for the first time, people could travel by train. Trains were much faster than coaches and horses, of course, and visitors came to London from all across the country. In 1851, there was the Great Exhibition at the Crystal Palace in Hyde Park. More than 6 million people came and saw the wonderful exhibits. In 1863, the world's first underground trains began to run in London, between Paddington and Farringdon. In 1881, there were more than 3 million people in the city. In the 20th century, German bombs destroyed many buildings in the Second World War, 1939 to 1945. But they did not destroy St. Paul's Cathedral. And now London has some of the world's most exciting new buildings. Today, people from all over the world live in London, and you can hear about 300 different languages here. It is big, noisy, and often dirty, but people love to visit London.